Oh, you guys, Swarmhosts are the new it thing. Welcome to Day 9 Daily, number 683 and a half, where we're learning to be a better gamer. The choice is yours and yours alone. Who watched Legends of the Hidden Temple as a kid, huh? Olmec loved his lines. Ooh! I love the stunts they put those children through. How is that not illegal? Nickelodeon. At this point in the game, we've gotten the chance to witness some great counterattack harassment from Vortix. We've gotten the chance to see these Swarmhosts suddenly appear for Vortix. Or excuse me, suddenly appear in Baby Knight's eyes, seemingly out of nowhere. And it's a nice, aggressive tool that will permit these brutal little counterattacks to continue. Poor little Colossus, getting beaten down. 36 workers have been killed, and it will not be the smallest number we'll see in this game. Oh, that's right, that harassment is still going so strong. As the hive tech is happening, roach numbers are still increasing in order to allow Vortix the opportunity to do these counters, to continue to apply pressure, to not be a passive player. Despite the fact that Swarmhost people love to be like, oh my god, this game gonna take like 5 days. This is a very nice, in-your-face move coming out of Vortix. It's very hard to deal with as a Protoss player. And in fact, if we look at the funds up here for Vortix, we see that it's 2,500 1K. It's very possible that Vortix could have avoided building all these roaches and had the perfect amount of money to build only Swarmhosts. If you look at the cost of Swarmhosts, it's just a really nice ratio. It's 2 to 1, 200, 100. You can't see my logos covering it. Look, just trust me, it's 2 to 1. So in theory, we could see a whole slew of additional Swarmhosts. However, Vortix only got some. He's only getting between 15 and 20, which is still a lot, to be fair. But there's still a lot of roaches on the field. These guys in the back are still harassing. He's up to 52 kills. Very well. And it's Corruptors as the replacement choice. Corruptors are a very deliberate choice because let's think through everything that Baby Knight could possibly be building. Well, if you went for Colossus too fast, then, well, the roaches are striking really early, and those Colossus can't rely on force fields to keep the roaches away from them. Those roaches are going to be doing a lot of damage to the Colossus. A lot of damage to the Protoss economy. I mean, other than that, there's like a Zealot Archon type mixtures that are becoming quite popular. Roaches are not very good against Zealot Archon mixtures in direct fights, but in terms of running every which way and peeling that force apart, works really, really well. And then the Swarmhost will be up in more than enough time to actually work well against that mix. The only thing that I'm going to just hand wave, I'm just going to do my Jedi mind tricks. I'll be like, and you understand that something different would happen would there be mass void rays. You understand that. Against a mass void ray army, which is very common, let me note. That's very common for it to be something like 1 Stargate, void ray, expand, 2 more Stargates, void ray, void ray, void ray, void ray. Or there's the SOS style of going 2 Stargate, void ray, and then swiftly going into Zealot Archon. I mean, Roach Swarmhost is going to lose real bad to that, obviously. So remember, you'd see something else. There's still plenty of time and plenty of opportunity to appropriately answer that. So I'm just going to hand wave and say, for everything else, it's very hard for our Protoss player to have a whole ton of Colossus. And Vortix is essentially going for this Roach Swarmhost mixture, slightly variable on whether he's seeing a lot of Immortals or not. If he saw the Colossus, he'd probably have gotten an earlier Spire. But we see Corruptors as the big choice for Vortix, and still more roaches coming out. Again, many players love the, once I can get the Swarmhosts, I'm only gonna build Swarmhosts, but we don't want to fall into that sort of behavior. This winds up being very effective for a mobile, aggressive army. One thing that's cool that we see Vortix do, and many Zerg players do, is there's actually no queens chilling back by these hatcheries. Well, not a lot, at the very least. This is the only queen on hatch duty. Once you get up to the very expensive units, you don't really need a ton of larvae in order to spend all your money continuously. You can go balls to the wall larva, as Jadong does, and do some absolutely gorgeous tech switches, but if you want to be doing this sort of style, it's okay to be a little bit light on the injects. Notice what's happened now as a result of pushing back this army. The Colossus fell, so that means right away, Baby Knight's got to get the hell out of there. And for the first time this game, everything is completely joined together. I mean, before there was like 10 roaches here trying to do counterattacks. These are really more of just annoying scout roaches. Now everything can join together. This sudden swell of Swarmhosts hasn't been added to for a very long time. And Broodlords are just getting in position with all the queenies. With all the excess funds, remember, don't need a ton of queens on inject duty. Spend the minerals on additional queens to do transfuses. On the larva, spend that on the corruptor stuffs. And nifty, we don't actually need corruptors. Broodlords are like better corruptors. The only time we really need corruptors is if we're up against something like heavy air. And again, I wave my hands in the skies. You will understand that you will do something different. And we just see the most impossible to deal with army of all time. Impossible. So here's the blink under. Transfuse, 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 didn't die. Okay, cool. You now get why you want to have transfuse. Queens are actually probably the best unit in this entire composition at this point. They just don't let anything die. Against mass air, that's honestly the answer of choice for many people. Just keep getting queens and keep getting the talent upgrades. Isn't this cool? This is a Swarmhost-based style that is rather aggressive, as opposed to what most people would expect, which is rather passive. And it's just crushing, it's crunching, it's rocking, it's rolling, it's winning, it's owning. I'm just gonna let you continue to witness this. More expanding and you know, and shit. Roaches and corruptors. The Swarmhost count has really not been added to all game long. Power overwhelming. Cool. I think you get it. So what we've learned in this game is we saw roaches used for lots of counterattack purposes, for harassment. We saw how fantastic burrow and how fantastic roach speed, roach tunneling claws was for that. And then we saw how, with all this harassment going on, Vortix was able to get a 4th base, and then suddenly Swarmhost, like 15 to 20, just popped up almost out of nowhere for Protoss. It was just enough to stay alive. Corruptors showed up just in time to repel the Colossus, and then it was a swift transition into Broodlords to continue attacking. Lots of multi-pronged stuff. It's very positional, very cool. The most important thing I want to note is what I started out saying in part 1. It's the concept that's key. Roach, Ling, to stay alive, but most importantly to start being counter-aggressive so that we can get Swarmhosts. And then once we have that, we go for the Hive and the Broodlords. This game had Vortix opening up in a weird way, going for the 5-minute double gas, clearly having no intention to take a 3rd base at all. You might claim that that's metagame, you might claim he had it planned, you might say he got confused and messed up and was trying to respond in the moment. Whatever the case is, those 3 principles will always be able to act as a guide. Whether you're trying a new build, or whether you've completely screwed up, or whether you have, you're just feeling lost in general. Really, really good things to note. We're going to go watch the second game between these 2 players on Frost. Again, love Baby Knight and Vortix. Just love watching their games. And especially against each other. We see Baby Knight after a loss with a good luck, have fun heart. That's what I mean. Oh, look at that. I'm going to do a heart too. I'm also going to do a question mark. Another question mark. Where are my symbols here? Looks like they're mostly question marks. I guess I don't have a lot of ASCII installed. There's no diamond to be found. How frowny. So the map is Frost. This is a map that is a lot harder to do this style on. Actually, a lot harder. If we just look, I mean, plainly, these 4 bases that we can get are relatively well defendable. But, I mean, anything other than that, I mean, if you're up here, and the Protoss army literally just does this and goes up, I mean, how do you send the Swarmhosts to be, or the Locust to be able to intercept that? It's very, very awkward, so I'm not as big a fan of it on this map, and we'll see why in this game. What I want to do right now, in this first moment, first of all, eat some lettuce. Oh god, I totally shopped at the lettuce store with Rabbit, man. What I want to talk about in this first examination of this game, the first part of it, is how different Vortix's build order is. Or I should say the differences in it. And how he can still use those little tidbits as guiding tools. Guiding principales. A little bit of mess-withingness happening. Vortix is largely in the dark. A Protoss who's taking this expansion is kind of hard to harass, but still not as hard to harass as you might think. Roach is up on the high ground, can pull an army pretty far down, and roaches can slip up here. These rocks can be destroyed to open up more room and make force fields worse. Ta-da! Vortix is going for the 3 hatchery play. Now you might ask yourself, why the 3 hatchery play on this map? Well, we can answer it by basically restating what we said in part 1. In part 1, we said Zerg wants to be ahead of Protoss in terms of the economy early on. What's one way to do that? To harass and kill his probes to beat up his economy. Another one is to just out-economy him, to just get more stuff. Looks like our good friend Probe is going to be fine. He's totally okay. Alright, cool. This is looking much more like a traditional Zerg vs. Protoss game. Very much so. Great scouting by Vortix. He's going to monitor 3rd bases. He has both the watch towers. He's got to make sure he doesn't let something slip in from below, but this Zergling is going to be on slip-in duty. 6-minute extractors. This is super by the book. I really even shouldn't be caring that much about this. Could be the Soul Train. Could be a fast Stargate. Could be fast Warp Gate attacks. We just don't know. We're not sure exactly what our Protoss opponent is doing. We want to make sure that we have some answer. Fantastic. The 2 Overlords that moved into the main base are going to get to witness the happy time friendly Stargate. And we see the usual answers. Spore Crawler, Spore Crawler, Spore Crawler, Spores, and more. And a fast Roach Warren to defend against the ground in case it's some sort of combination attack. We see the Lings coming up as well, the Ling speed. This is again looking very much so like a more typical Protoss versus Zerg game. But let's try to note some of the more interesting differences. One is, we see an extra queen coming up from Vortix. In the circumstance where you could choose answers for whatever you are up against, you want to choose an answer that feeds into this Roach, counterattack, Swarmhost in the middle to delay, and Broodlord at the end. What was one of the big pieces we saw at the end of that? The queens shooting everything down. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with getting the queens right now. That's good. Even though it won't feed into our strategy for a while, it still feeds into that very, very end segment. Alright, I don't think there's anything too incredibly significant happening for a little bit. This is one of the most by-the-book situations. Oh my god, he's expanded. What now? We see Vortix doing a little bit more of a heavy-duty version of his previous goals. He's going for 2 Evo chambers to get what would seem like more upgrades. But I want you to tie this together. Look at this moment in time right now. Double Evo chamber. Instant infestation pit. instant glial reconstitution. What your brain wants to do is to say that this is a different build. Things are happening in crazy orders. Vortix has lost his mind. He has betrayed what I thought he did, which is builds. Very easy to look at this and think that it's not related to what we saw before. But it's basically the same thing. This is the version that would happen if you go for a 3 base, and let's talk about why. In the first game, we got 1 Evo chamber very early, so we were able to get +1 attack done very early and +2 attack done very early, and once we got to mid-game, we had 2/2 done from a single evolution chamber. In this game, Vortix is waiting quite a while to get his evolution chamber. So he's going to go, since he waited so long to start his first upgrade, he's going to get 2 to make sure that they finish at the same time. Still flows in. Again, by the end of mid-game, we were at 2/2 with 1 evolution chamber previously. Here, we're going to get to the end of mid-game with 2/2. Ta-da! What's another thing going on? Roach Warren, that's popping on down, well, getting it as fast as possible, but it seems like he's getting the infestation pit at the same time as this Roach Warren. Well, we don't really have, I mean, in the other game, Roach Speed was like done right now. And we saw Vortix getting ready to take this infestation pit when he was on 3 bases. We see the Ling upgrades coming in right now, or for the later game, the Broodlord upgrades. Just a little bit of a different tweak with basically the same setup. And we see roaches getting produced as well, just straight up. We see 72 drones, there's the usual high count amount. And we're going to see what looks like an almost instant play for Swarmhosts. It's going to look almost instant. See, there's the Enduring Locust upgrade. But again, in this spot, Vortix has a better economy, so he can do more things. We still see the same theme from Vortix, just flooding out lots and lots of roaches blindly, unable to really see anything. Same thing as last game, we saw the glial reconstitution be the trigger for these roaches to move out and move in aggressively. So the period that these roaches are going to have to be able to harass and to be able to do annoying things is going to be much less, but you know what? The speed roaches are still going to be able to allow that 4th base to get up. I'm going to speed it up just a pinch. We have the Overlord moving in, getting a good sight sense of what everything is up to. And here's where I want to say perhaps the most notable thing to see is what we don't see. God, I sound full of shit. But here's the thing. When we look at this, I don't want you to think of it as, oh, in the first game he went Ling Roach counter aggression, and then he went Swarmhosts, and then he went for the Broodlords. And in this game, he's doing something different. He's going for the Swarmhost really fast, and then he's going for the Broodlords. What I want you to think of it as is this opportunity, this Ling Roach harassment, he just warped through very quickly. Very, very quickly. There's opportunities that Vortix is electing not to take. He's electing to skip past it. Should he have seen opportunities, these guys would have kicked right into action. Sometimes Protosses are insane and take a 4th base around 12 minutes. And then we'd see these roaches kick right into action. But again, it's not a different build. It's not that he's not doing this early portion. He's skipping through it very, very, very quickly. And the whole reason we want to emphasize that as much as possible... Let me close Facebook. There we go. The reason we want to emphasize this as much as possible is that these 3 phases were guiding principles. They're guides. They're tools that you can use to help pull you through the game. Because it's very easy to hear what I just said and be like, oh, he's just trying to bend an argument. He's just trying to warp what he was saying in part 1 until he sounds right. But what happens is, if you can identify this as, ooh, he has an opportunity to do this Ling Roach counter aggression into Swarmhosts. Okay, he's skipping past it. Then you can actually do the same thing in your own game. You can say, all right, my goal is to do Ling Roach counter aggression, maybe using Burrow, maybe using Glial Reconstitution. Do I want to skip it? Is it a good time to skip it in this game? Or do I want to drill for it harder? If I'm deciding that I'm probably not going to be doing it this game, what upgrades can I remove from it? Turns it into, again, a very good guide. We still see these components showing up. There's still lots of roaches for Vortix being produced out of the blue. Being produced just once he had enough drones up and about. And we'll still see some same counterattack behavior happening throughout the game. But now we've hit this second phase of this part in the game. Vortix is keeping all his unit by the rocks, so there's as little revealed about these as possible. We see the same thing, the Spire coming up as an answer once it's time to begin teching towards Hive. And we see yet again, in the last game, it was 16 minutes is when the Hive went down. Sometimes Zergs wait till 17 or 18. Here it's going down at 12:30. Remember that whole stuff that I talked about a lot previously? About Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3? Oh, he might be skipping through one quite quickly. Same thing again. This Zerg player is saying, man, I know Protoss is so locked up, I don't even want to attempt to break in there. I'm just going to go straight for Hive. That is the thought process that would encourage you to skip through a segment of gameplay. And skip through. Not skip past or skip it entirely, but just kind of do that same phase still, but kind of quickly step to Phase 3. So here Vortix is doing kind of a similar line of things that he was doing earlier, trying to make pushes, trying to be aggressive with them, the same general look. And we're also starting to see other things. Why on earth would Vortix be upgrading these Lings things? Why? Because he's teching to a Hive faster. He's going to Phase 3 of his plan faster, and by doing that faster, he's spending less time mining gas. In other words, he has less gas of stuff to deal with. He still wants the Swarmhosts to be able to do, to be that key stepping stone up until he gets to his Hive Tech Broodlords. And since he's gonna not really have a lot of gas, he's just gonna focus on Ling upgrades. So cool. Super cool. We got the chance to see this game's opening linked to the previous game's opening. We've gotten the chance to see, by virtue of saying, am I going to go through this opening slowly, like in Game 1? We saw the ranged attack be favored, because roaches are going to be in the game for a longer period of time. The Swarmhosts are going to be in the game for a longer period of time before we got the Hive in Game 1. Now in Game 2, we can see Vortix saying, well, I'm just going to go through the phases of my plan faster, so that's why I want to be emphasizing Zerglings. And that's why I want to be de-emphasizing this roach counter-aggression. I'm not going to have the gas to do it if I want to go that quickly. In Part 3, we're going to see Vortix with this very nice setup that he has. Some of what goes wrong in order for the game to sort of fall out of his grasp. Because at this point in time, everything's looking very good for both sides. So the loss conditions are going to happen later on in the game. They haven't happened yet. So stay tuned and we'll look at more of that stuff in Part 3. Do-do-do-do-do-do.